Good evening, everyone. My name is Apurva Chamaria, and I'm your host for the evening session. I lead startup and venture capital partnerships for Google India. A very warm welcome to everyone. GenAI Exchange Hackathon aims to use AI to unlock social and business opportunities in India. This hackathon is supported by Meti Startup Hub, Startup India, VCs, and startups founders. We aim to bring together developers, enterprises, and ecosystem partners to empower the hackathon participants with knowledge, tools, and mentorship so that they can start building on GenAI. We really wanted to thank Antler for their valued partnership on this initiative. And I would like to invite Nitin on stage.
Hi, Apurva. Nice to see you here.
Nice to see you. So I'll quickly introduce Nitin. Nitin brings him with him more than a decade of experience in global venture capital, having invested in 100 plus tech startups across stages, from being the first believer all the way to pre-IPO. He's currently the co-CEO and lead partner at Antler India. He learned the ropes of VC business in US at NEA, one of the world's largest funds, and then was a founding team member at Lightbox Ventures, which is one of India's leading funds with 400 million AUM. He then went on to start his own micro VC called First Principles as a thesis driven early believer in 40 plus startups and was the first VC in India to focus on Web3. Nitin is a Wharton graduate and serves on the advisory boards and groups of USC, Viterbi School, Niti Aayog, Angel List, and the Better India. Thank you so much for joining us, Nitin. It's always a pleasure to speak to you and learn from you.
Likewise, always enjoy learning from you too.
So, Nitin, we'll divide the questions about market. How do you see AI space, go to market, team and talent, and risk and challenges? So to start off with, Antler has been a really prominent, differentiated early stage investor, and you've invested in AI startups like ALT, Autodraft, Figure, Kusho, and Segwise. How do you truly identify disruptive ideas in this fast evolving, crowded Gen AI space?
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks to Google and thanks Apurva for having me. Um, I think the so we have 17 startups we've backed with an AI thesis so far. I think most of this audience would be very familiar with the general way of thinking about the value stack in the world of AI. Right? You've got the infra parts with like NVIDIA, the semis part, and the cloud and the inference infra part, and you've got the models, foundational models part, the LLMs, and then you've got sort of tooling and middleware, and then you've got applications, right? Uh, since we are sitting in India, I think everyone agrees, but I'll just repeat for consistency, right? We've got the likes of Sharma doing some great work on the foundational model part, but although other than that, unfortunately, it's been tough to find too much activity there. Of course, the bottom infra part is something again which we don't have a great position in. I hope that in the next few years the semis landscape will evolve. So most of the action then, of course, tends to be on the application side. So of the 17 investments that we have, I think 14 or 15 of them are actually on the application side. So to answer your question, what do we look for in evaluating something with a GenAI thesis? So first things first, I'm 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 keeping two buckets here. Right? One is every startup needs to have some thinking around AI, right? Not AI for the sake of it, but of course, every startup we see, almost everything we see right now, will have an AI element. So I'm keeping that aside. I'll focus on specifically the opportunities which are Gen AI first. For me, it's just been sort of two or three fundamental questions, right? The most important thing for us at the stage at which we invest is still the team. We can talk a bit more about that later. But I just like to understand from first principles what is suddenly new and differently enabled by Gen AI versus discriminative AI, which has been around for a long time. So every pitch, so many, maybe 70% of what we see is AI, and a lot of startups claim to be AI first. But the first thing I try to understand is what is it different enabled by Gen AI, which wasn't enabled earlier? Because we AI has been around forever, from sort of deep learning and NLP, etc. I think the big shift is, of course, that we figured out language, and all knowledge is language. So we figured out all knowledge, and it's passed the Turing test. So and of course the platform shift is very real, right? We know that PCs took 24 years to reach 50% of the population. The internet took 12 years, half of that. Mobile took 6 years, half of that. And so Gen AI, maybe in 3 years, right, should be touching 50% of users. So I think with that mindset, I really just try to focus on what is fundamentally enabled by Gen AI. What we have done, if we look at the investments we've made on the application side, a lot more focus for us has been um, either founders who are reimagining the workflow, not just sort of sprinkling Gen AI. So that is where I think it's more interesting. And even if it is unclear, it is more interesting, right, at the pre-seed stage. So founders who are thinking about, we have a company called Plotch, which is trying to create the LLM for retail in India. So thinking ground up from saying, okay, how should the experience of any seller be? Let's reimagine it from the ground up. Let's not take the current thing and, you know, patch up some AI in between. So that is a bias, reimagining workflows. Second, I think specificity and domain knowledge is something that I've personally valued a lot. What do I mean by that? I think even if Gen AI companies are startups are new as a model, fundamentals still are the same. You still have to build something. You still have to sell. And I think just like you know, SaaS moved from horizontal to vertical, I think we like to think of sort of AI, Gen AI founders who are picking one problem and going very deep into it. So I'll give you an example of AutoDraft. It's a young startup focused on 2D animation, especially for comics and manga and Japanese, Korean animation. That's very specific, right? A lot of startups have a flashy deck saying we will reimagine 3D animation. That's wonderful, with Gen AI, right? But I think maybe it's still very hard to solve it, and it has its own universe. But when Sachin and the team at Autodraft came, it was really about reimagining 2D animation very specifically, and they really broke it down to the basics of why just animating one frame of a comic book takes hours and hours, and consistency is very important. And that is why you just cannot just apply Gen AI. You have to apply good product alongside Gen AI to enable consistency. So long story short, one, reimagining workflows. Two, specificity and domain depth, right? Married with a co-founder who has AI depth. So that's how we've approached it so far. I can go into more details in the next questions you might have.
Thank you, Nitin. It's a very good answer. There's a question which a lot of GenAI founders have been asking us. Do you really need a MVP or some kind of product which is built out before you approach an early stage investor like Antler?
No, not at all. That answer is coming from an Antler perspective, so I can't speak for other pre-seed investors or others, investors in general. For those who may be familiar with Antler, they already know that we are a day zero investor. So our bet is really on two things: the founding team and the deep understanding of them as people and why they are building what they're building, and secondly, clarity of what they want to build. Right. So we don't require MVPs and products, revenues, or even users to make an investment decision. What we do require is a very high level of obsession, clarity, etc. Now, because we like to seek those things, it is coincidental that most people we end up backing by the time they go through our residency or diligence and come to an investment committee, they usually have some kind of early proof points, right? But it's not necessary for us that there is an MVP with early user data, because I think early user data can also be misleading. So we don't rely too much on what the first 50 users are saying, because maybe it's not even the right set of users. So that's just how we invest. Others may have a very different philosophy.
Sure. I'm amazed at the amount of startups which Antler looks at and your sourcing capabilities. Since you look at so many startups, which markets or sub markets in GenAI you think are getting saturated? And conversely,
Yeah.
where would you like to see deals? Like, what are people not building or building less of?
So a very short, high level answer, and then I'll give you the details. Uh, I wish people were going harder around consumer AI. I think when we look at education, we look at health, um, personal finance. I think there is an opportunity to reimagine the user experience with Gen AI, and enable things which were not possible earlier. I think I wish founders were looking more into that. Personally, I have a liking for what will happen next in education and edtech. So far, most of edtech we've seen has been neither ed nor tech. In the last couple of decades, there have been good businesses for some time, but also not necessarily sustainable. But I think that even though the market's so negative on edtech in general, I actually think that it's a great area for some new founders to look into, because fundamentally, right, that if you look at GPT 4.0 and the demos, some of it's out, some of it's in the works, but just that fundamental change in the sense that you can actually enable personalization and actually enable a personal tutor is a huge deal. Whether it's used in different schooling models or even as a supplement, for not just K-12 but also professional education, etc. I think it can enable us to do things which were not possible earlier in terms of pedagogy and outcomes. So I wish in general people were building more around consumer AI education, and especially thinking first principles for what for the Bharat user needs, for example, right? Which being in India, um, what is overdone? So I think last year we saw a lot of things which would be best classified as wrappers. They were really just an interaction layer on top of an existing product. And again, as I said, they hadn't actually reimagined the workflow. Uh, then we started seeing a lot of co-pilots, right? And that's continued into, and many of our investments could be classified as co-pilots for some job, some function. So I think that I would say that the basic wrapper story is overdone. I think co-pilots which are reimagining workflows or built for very specific with very specific domain understanding are still underdone. Uh, but we're certainly seeing a lot of critical volume there. I also think specific to India, just BFSI might be a space where you know Gen AI in general may seem like it'll get commoditized, but because banks and insurance companies and financial institutions, I think, act a certain way and they buy a certain way, and there are sorry, there's a disturbance. There are so many workflows. Like think of how when you apply for a loan, right? Think of the number of pieces of paperwork, the number of touch points and nodes that an application goes into, and so much of it is just data collection and verification, right? And um, and so I think just in BFSI there may be some great businesses to be built with where the India volume can actually be sufficient, right? You don't necessarily need to think of it as build in India for the world. So yeah, more consumer AI, more edtech, less wrappers, more thoughtfully done co-pilots, maybe specifically Bharat users, BFSI. Um, I would say IT services is this is again not something that is unique or brilliant that I'm saying, but I think given that we have such a strong base in IT services, what's going to happen? So on one hand, you have the IT services companies which are adapting, and some of them better than others, by becoming more AI led and changing their business scope to, from digital transformation to sort of generative AI led transformation. But I think there is also an opportunity to create a completely new services company, and some folks have started in that direction. I find that to be fascinating because I don't think IT services is going away. I think global enterprises, will still need IT services, and I think India will continue to be the right place to build those kinds of companies. So, just that question of, what should a new IT services company look like with the right kind of leverage ratio, more operating leverage, so it looks a bit between a product and a service kind of company, right? It's got a services element, but it's got product like margins in some cases. I think that would be very, very interesting. Um, the last thing I would say on this is one should really think hard about the India advantage versus not, right? So for a long time, we used to think SaaS companies built in India, more lower cost structures, one third sales, one fourth engineering cost, one fifth support cost, and that arbitrage is great. And I think what I find interesting is that uh, GenAI actually removes some of that arbitrage, right? So it's kind of like what I would look at in maybe even in Web3, etc. If you're building a company in some parts of GenAI, you really have to be thinking very hard about your go to market and differentiation, because you can't rely only on cost, because arguably some of these companies can now be created in the US also without the same kind of high cost, right? So anyway, it's a very rapidly evolving landscape, so I think we have to keep learning and update our views every quarter.
Completely agree, Nitin. Uh, GTM is so important, especially when you're building for B2B, or route to market is so important for BTC. When you're evaluating these really early stage startups, day zero startups, as Antler calls them, how do you uh, how do you evaluate their prospective go to market, and how meaningful does it need to be? Do they need to have like very concrete ideas?
It's a great question, and I don't know if there's an easy answer because it obviously varies. There are some startups which are, infra developer focused, things like LLM ops, and there the question again is, what is the playbook to acquire developers, right? So maybe the it's not fundamentally different from how a dev tools company or a Postman or something would have done it in the past. So we look for the same things: ability to build developer ecosystems, and understanding of great documentation, and how do you from India build a lot of respect in the US engineering teams, etc. Um, if it is SMB focused, um, I think if anything, so one way to look at it is, if it's SMB, mid market, enterprise, fundamentally the GTM that you look for, I personally don't think that differently about what Gen AI startups versus SaaS or other tech startups, right? Those questions are roughly the same. So at least for me, it's not fundamentally different in any way. So we would look for the same kind of clarity. Uh, I think you know if anything, product differentiation matters more, because I think what I just said, right? If you're building a co-pilot for something and you feel like I don't know what, like a product manager role, or any kind of DevOps, etc. Uh, arguably, if the cost difference of building in India versus the US is not there, then you would have plenty of competition earlier, and so I think your product and your understanding of the domain and the user becomes even more important, right? So I would actually say that one way to look at it is, um, GTM and product are not separate, right? Sometimes it's actually the product is the GTM, and that sometimes that often gets neglected, but maybe now with GenAI it's even more important. So yeah, crazy obsession with product, and I think apart from that, very similar principles as to how we would look for the thinking. I think the point is you brought up is very important, which is what most of the founders we run into. We're very impressed by a lot of things, but sometimes it's this what makes the make or break decision between investing or not, is that they haven't talked to enough users or other companies, other startups to really have a clear view of GTM, right? I think the age of like presenting a high level GTM is gone, right? It will not get you anywhere. Forget funding. Funding is the easy part. Building is the hard part. Uh, so what you just need now is just a lot more specificity of, right, what's the motion, what are the first customers, what are the channels that are likely to work, and the good founders do their homework. So you don't have to show that the GTM strategy is working, but you have to have a very well thought out GTM motion. By you can't assume that it's something you'll figure out, right? I think the bar is now very high.
Agree. Nitin, there are also many founders who, when they are starting a AI company, come from a non-technical background. Any advice to them on how should they go about recruiting a AI co-founder and the initial team? So they have the business
Come to the
idea, domain
right.
experience.
Come to the Antler residency. No, I think. I mean, I'm serious about the fact that that's actually one of the best places, just because we try to curate a very, very about 1% of people who apply. So, and yes, about half of that audience is tech founders, or and no surprise, almost everyone that we recruit now has an AI background. So that's one way. And if not Antler residency, then other forums might also work. But um, I don't think, again, I don't think very differently about recruiting the tech co-founder for AI versus pre-Gen AI, right? What I've just learned over the years is that the smartest engineers, um, they want to work on in a space that they might care about, so that they can build scale. What we see is a lot of them maybe come in and say, I want to work around healthcare, but they're not too specific about what problem in healthcare, right? So I think, one, their affinity towards a domain can be a reason for you to approach them, match with them. The second is the smart engineers always want to work on hard problems. And so it's really, that's what I've seen attracts them. And then um, they have to obviously, you have to show the intellectual humility uh, and curiosity as well. So what I've seen, some of the non-tech, new to AI founders who have had success, let's say in our residencies, I think I just see many of them, as long as they're very curious, right? In 1 or 2 months, they go very deep, so that when they're talking to a tech co-founder, it's not like, hey, you come and solve all this. They have actually done the homework themselves also. There's no excuse for not doing it today. So they build that understanding of, what are tokens, um, what's the latest what's the latest with LLMs, what would be the way to acquire training data, right? And then of course they may not know everything about, like, how we will fine tune a model, etc. That of course the tech co-founder brings. But I think that it's important for you to work with a great AI tech co-founder. It's important for you to have that curiosity yourself also, and go at least a few levels deep. So yeah, those would be 3 or 4 things which I've seen have worked successfully for some of the best founders we funded, when they found an AI co-founder outside their network.
Super inspiring message. Do your homework and know enough to engage meaningfully with your prospective or current tech AI co-founder. That's good advice for everybody on the call. Nitin, when you, as a team, as the Antler team, think about these companies which are pitching to you, uh, and this, this whole mode of deploying products, which is AI, is changing so fast. What are the risks you discuss internally in your team?
Risks related to specifically Gen AI companies?
Yes, yes. Like, do you discuss technical risk, or are you more concerned about is it differentiated enough? And the founder will then iterate. Tech could keep changing.
Yeah. No, I think pretty much a few of the things I mentioned, I think as guiding principles. So one, the foundational qualities of a great team are the same, right? So that's a given. I think I think the as I said, the obsession, uh, the ability to learn very quickly, because with the update cycles of these models and how quickly this landscape is changing, you probably it's more important than earlier to have founders who can move fast and stay ahead and just be learning machines. So I would say that you know um, instead of machine learning, I look for learning machines, right? People who are learning machines rather than machines who can learn. So I think the one is speed and staying ahead. Second is again, like you pointed out, the understanding of what does Gen AI fundamentally change, right? Rather than saying let's use AI, have to think first principles about, okay, this was a workflow, these are this is what a clinical workflow in a hospital looks like, and these are the steps where automation or using agents can make a difference, right? So that ability to break down a process, a workflow, and identify where exactly Gen AI will fit, and to reimagine that, I think that. So the depth of looking at a domain or a workflow is one of the moats, because you will, for every one good that kind of Gen AI founder, I think there are five or six, including funded ones, who are not going deep enough, right? And so for a while you can just sell the story and even raise money, but fundamentally you will not deliver different economics for your customer, right? If you're not delivering fundamentally different outcomes, then AI won't matter. So so one, I said, as I said, learning, staying ahead, curiosity, humility, even more important than earlier. Two, being more first principles, being more paranoid about these kinds of questions, because even your, as I said, the product differentiation may need to be even stronger, right? Because the underlying infrastructure is commoditized. So of course your data is a moat, but even then, right, I'm not sure that the data itself is the only moat that matters anymore. That used to be a tagline we used. And yeah, I think those would be just that level of product differentiation and obsession would is at least what we look at.
Excellent. Um, so Nitin, in US, at least in growth stage and venture stage, VCs now have models where they are saying, "Hey, we'll make GPUs easily accessible." Like we've taken a forward call and bought GPUs. Part of their investment strategy is actually becoming, providing early access to tech and preferential access. What are the emerging models you are seeing in Indian VC landscape as almost all VCs converge on trying to find the best early stage AI founders?
It's a good question. I think it's a work in progress, right? So for us, we have built global partnerships, including, of course, with Google. We just announced that Antler founders globally have redeemed $100 million in perks now. So it's actually an interesting milestone. I think I think what we are trying to do, and I don't know about other firms, is to build a new set of partnerships and perks, right? So level one is, of course, the GPU compute kind of partnerships, but I think ideally, right? And again, this is not something that I have a ton of updates on right now, but what we would like to do is to have everything from a Hugging Face to a serverless GPU. One of our startups called Inferless does that, to weights and biases, like all of these kinds of important tooling and orchestration layers being part of that package. So one is just to expand, to new things which weren't. It's not just about like computing infra. It's about partnerships with foundational model companies, OpenAI, etc., Google, of course, but also the tooling and some middleware. So that is one. And the second, I think, is to bring new types of advisors. Um, we need where that one way to differentiate is to make sure that especially as you mentioned, some of the founders who may be new to AI can really benefit from some expertise in their advisory groups, etc. So we are working on that as well.
Excellent. Um, how do you view the regulatory landscape? Some of these startups which you are investing in might also be targeting the global market. So, and when you're targeting the global market, what data do you train the model on? Uh, and we're seeing everything from, you know, regulators insisting that if you're doing AI images, you should watermark it, to disclosing the data quality, Hollywood suing M&E startups. So, all kinds of action
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, if I expand the question, right, it's just around sort of regulation, ethics, and other risks, right, beyond the team, beyond the business. Um, so I would say that we are in the early stages of this, right? We haven't really run into uh, much of this because, for example, at this point we haven't invested in a foundational model company, right? I wish there were more people going after it from India itself, but there are good reasons why it's tough. So I think some of the real risks are actually at that level, right? When you're talking about application companies, when I mentioned the consumer part, right, which is what we actually haven't seen enough of, I think that's where some of this will play out much more, right? So if most of the activity is applications but B2B, I think the risks are more manageable and still evolving, but more manageable. I think when we start dealing with companies and for the same things that I personally would love to invest in, including education and all, we have to be very, very careful. So I think there, the it's almost like an additional, we typically investors do financial legal diligence. I think AI diligence will become almost a separate project, right? To think more carefully about how the team has thought about the data, the stack, the learning, the training data, methodology, um, uh, everything from reinforcement learning to human oversight of the outputs, to avoiding biases that may arise from training data, to hallucination. And especially in a country like India, we cannot be responsible for any kind of outputs that make people make wrong decisions about their finances, education, health. So I think when the consumer side develops more, this will become extremely important. At this stage, we are doing a more basic, sort of diligence and understanding of how the founders are thinking about putting the right controls in place. Um, and of course, the last thing on that is sort of data localization, where the short answer is we just have to, everyone has to comply with the local regulations. So I think that framework, of course, is still developing around the data protection bills in the parliament and so on. So we have to wait and watch. But my sense is that India would want as much of this to be localized as possible for good reason, and we have to just comply and make sure our founders are very aware of that.
Thank you, Nitin. Um, we're taking some questions now. For tech founders who are working on a full time job and building on the side, at what point in the timeline of the startup should they quit their job and go full time? Uh, does it depend on a individual to individual case, or what is your general recommendation?
So again, that answer would be irrespective of Gen AI or not. Um, I think I'm a believer that you should only start a company. So again, let me take a step back. Right, entrepreneurship is a wonderful thing. India needs more entrepreneurs. There are lots of entrepreneurial opportunities in lots of places in India. So I will never discourage anyone from being an entrepreneur, right? It's one of the best things you can do in life. It grows you as a person, and there's no other path to have the maximum impact and growth. My answer will have to be, which I'm sure you're asking, is who should go build a venture-backed company? right? Who should start a company so that you are trying to scale from with venture capital? That is a different answer, because then, and this is what our residency is all about, you have to think much harder about whether you want to do it, whether it's right for you, whether it's right for your business idea. Generally speaking, I just tell people, if you haven't reached the point where you are not able to stop thinking about your idea, it's keeping you up at night, you are anxious over the weekends, and it's like, until the point it is really becoming something that's bothering you, don't start a company, at least with a venture scalability in mind, right? When something with a problem idea has consumed you, then if you are uh, financially and, of course, emotionally, financially in the right place in life, then do it, right? Then go for it. And what's the worst thing that will happen? uh, Failure has become, used to be a taboo in India. I think today, especially in the like vibrant ecosystem we have, like it's almost it's really now not a taboo, right? It's really more in your mind if it is. I think most of the great employers, folks like Google, other tech companies, actually value startup experience, value founding experience. So I don't think that, it used to be something that worried people. What if it doesn't work out? I think India is in a place today where it's almost irrational not to try, right? If you have some level of financial security, and but that, depends on every person to person, so I cannot answer it for everyone. But generally speaking, the cost of failure is much lower than it used to be. And most people, I feel, actually, if you work in a good company for some time, you have some savings, and the cost of living and building in India is actually very low relative to the rest of the world. So uh, just be sure that you are consumed by the problem, because otherwise you will not be able to sustain more than a year or so, right? I actually don't think it's the financial risk, it's actually the emotional risk, which I tell people to worry more about.
Completely, as somebody very wise said, find something which consumes you and get consumed. So very good
Exactly,
advice
yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly. But it's like love or whatever also, right? Like, find
Yeah.
something which you cannot not do, and then just go with it, like just go with it, and don't stop.
Yeah, there's one more question. Can you provide insights on what is stopping Indian founders from building product companies in tech rather than largely service-based businesses? Are you seeing a growth in product-based startups in recent years?
Good question. So I would say, it's not stopping many people anymore, right? You see the SaaS product ecosystem. Um, there is, I think some of the reports have said it'll be a $50 billion revenue ecosystem, right? So the IT services industry, my numbers might be slightly off or not updated, but generally speaking, it's a $250 billion industry, but that's built over 3-4 decades. The software products industry, starting with companies like Freshworks and Zoho or InMobi, etc., and with so many other dev tooling startups, horizontal SaaS, vertical SaaS, etc., is going to be about 50 billion in 2027, right? So first thing, it's already big. um, and the reasons that some people don't start it or don't think like that, I think you need um, if you only have spent your time in around IT services, then it can affect the way you think about building products. uh, it doesn't have to, but it's something to be conscious of. So what defines success in IT services, right? uh, Customer orientation, but like really thinking of it almost like a consultative sale. Customization, non-standardization is okay, right? We have to make your customer successful. Secondly, it's often involving projects which require a lot of people, and that means that your mindset is about linear growth. Non-linear growth is not possible very easily, right? If you want to grow a services company from 1 million to 2-3 million, you have to increase headcount, because you're used to sort of 30-40% gross margin, not 90%. To build a product company, you have to be obsessed about just one thing that you want to get so right, a product set of features that will work for the majority of customers, and also be able to say no to the rest of the customers. So the hardest thing is to say no to so much business that comes. If you are starting a company, a lot of people will push you in the direction of like, build this for me. You have to build it for not that particular user, but for the users that the one dominant user that you want to serve globally or at scale. So it's just those ways of conditioning and how you hire. All of this gets affected, right? What you look for in people, and patience, right? Because for a product company, you may not have revenues for a while, right? You may need venture funding. You might be more focused on getting the features right, engagement right, versus revenue on day one. That's not an easy thing for most people to understand or internalize, right? That level of risk is not inherent. So many people would prefer to, and my answer is that it's perfectly fine to do either, right? Do what you're cut out to do or what you really want to do. But yeah, I don't think that there is that much of a hesitation nowadays around people getting started.
Great. So I want to be mindful of Nitin's time. Nitin is traveling, he's overseas. So uh, thank you to all the amazing founders who joined the session and found it insightful. Would request you to continuously join all these incredible sessions which we are hosting for you as you think about building in the Gen AI space. On this note, please stay tuned for the upcoming technical workshop into intro to RAG architecture, including Vertex AI search and building enterprise chat apps using Gen AI. If you still haven't started your project yet on the hackathon or not registered, please find the registration link in the chat box. Use that to register. We have 17 amazing partners who have given challenges, uh, including Antler. So go ahead and solve for these challenges. And we are looking forward to seeing you at the demo day and looking forward to the incredible solutions you are building on Gen AI. Thank you and have a great evening and night ahead. Thank you so much, Nitin.
Thank you so much, Apurva. Hopefully this was helpful. Sorry I had a bit of a disturbance at the end, but thank you.
All good, very helpful. Thank you so much for doing this.
Bye.
Welcome everyone to the GenAI Exchange Hackathon by Google, supported by Miri Startup Hub and Startup India in partnership with startups, enterprises, and VCs. Thank you for joining us today. If you haven't registered for the hackathon yet, please find the registration link in the chat box. I hope yesterday's session on vector databases and code assist was valuable. Today, we'll be diving deep into intro to RAG architectures, including Vertex AI search and building enterprise chat apps using GenAI. I'm Shilpa, a customer engineer at Google Cloud, and I'll be hosting this workshop. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the session, and I'll do my best to address them at the end of the session. Let's begin. So first of all, let's take a look at some of the terminologies relevant in today's session. LLMs. LLM stands for large language models. These models are trained on a huge amount of data and they can be pretty effective at answering questions. But the information can quickly become out of date, or it wasn't trained to do something you need, or it can just make up stuff or hallucinate. There are two main ways to improve the accuracy of information output by an LLM. One is fine tuning, and the other is RAG. Fine tuning, on one hand, is like sending the model off to college. The model already knows basic things like grammar, but going to college allows it to become more specialized in a particular field. For example, you have Google's MedPalm, which is a fine-tuned version of Palm for the medical field, and Cody is a fine-tuned version of for writing code. It's especially useful for teaching it all new words it wouldn't know otherwise, like a technical jargon. However, like going to a college can be expensive and time consuming, fine tuning can also be time consuming and expensive. Plus, you need a lot of data to get good results. Retrieval-Augmented Generation, on the other hand, or RAG like it's otherwise called, is kind of like giving the model a lecture or making it study for a test with a particular syllabus. You give it relevant information, then you can ask questions based on that information. You can use either one of these models or even both together. But for today's session, we're going to focus mostly on RAG. So, what is RAG? Well, one could misunderstand that it's a piece of cloth that we use to clean kitchen counters or our cars. But no, it's not the same in the tech world. Let me explain this first with a small analogy first before going into the tech definition itself. So, if someone were to ask me how many planets are there in the solar system, I would say 9. Now, this answer is wrong and it's problematic for two reasons. One, I'm responding based on what I learned back in school, which was years ago. So my information is now wrong. The answer itself is wrong, and it's problematic for two reasons, right? So one, it's out of date. Two, I'm not really fact checking it from any reliable source, so it has no source. If instead I looked into a reliable source for the right answer before answering the question, then my answer would have been 8. So now my answer is grounded and it's factual, picking it from a reliable source such as the IAU. So what I'm doing here is, one, I've been trained on relevant data in the past, but this can become outdated because I learned this in school. So now I look up a reliable source on the internet, retrieve the right answer, augment it with my response, and then generate it. This reliable source then continues to grow the content store with new information as and when they become available. In essence, here I'm the LLM, and the methodology that I'm using to generate the correct answer is called RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. So let's get into the tech definition now, and let's break down the words. What does generation mean here? Generation means using generative AI to make something new, like text, images, audio, etc. Augmented means to be made greater, larger, or more complete. Retrieval, on the other hand, is the process of getting something back from somewhere, the obtaining or consulting of material stored in a computer system. This means we're going to generate text that has been augmented with data we've retrieved from somewhere. Basically, using RAG will help combat the biggest problems with LLMs, which is their lack of information and propensity to make up things. LLMs are trained on a huge amount of information and they're surprisingly effective. But they don't have up-to-date information, and they don't always find the right information, and they certainly don't have access to private or hard to find information. In this example, as you see on the screen, the model knows that you can make games with Flutter, which is an open source framework that helps developers develop apps. It knows you can make apps with it, but it doesn't know about a toolkit that was released in 2022. Oops, sorry. So with RAG, if you see here, we've added search results to the LLM context. You can see that the output has been grounded with citations to search results. And even though the LLM hasn't been trained on new data, it has access to the new data through search. This is why search really matters, to ensure that you're giving your LLM the right context to summarize. In this example, by just scrolling through the Flutter website, it gives us the right information about the Flutter Casual Games toolkit. So, what does it take to build a RAG search yourself? Now that you've understood what a RAG is, what does it take to build one? Honestly, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but what you see here is a pretty standard pattern. First, you have to decide what data to collect. Should it be public or private, unstructured text or structured data like a database or a spreadsheet? Next, you have to be able to extract information from documents. Sometimes that's easy, like for a text document or HTML, but sometimes it can be really hard. Consider parsing PDFs with like wonky page breaks and embedded data across many different layouts. Next is chunking, which is also a important part of this processing, because the meaning of a sentence is often related to the previous sentence or a section heading or a page title or whatever that exists on the page. Then you have to vectorize it. An LLM processes the chunks of data, encodes the semantic meaning into these vectors, and it's interpreted by the LLM. Those vectors are then written down for a subsequent lookup. At runtime, when a user enters a query, you probably should also do a spell check and create few variations of the wording. After all this, then you do the vector search for an approximate nearest neighbor, or maybe you want to do an inverted file search across the features, or even construct a hierarchical navigable small word if you have a large amount of vectors. And after all this, you also have to rank your search results for relevancies to the query that has been asked. Now you pass the search results as part of the context for the LLM and try to get a well grounded summary. Now, all of this also has to be hosted somewhere that's secure, performant, and stable. In short, an LLM needs the right data so that it does not have to make things up, and you need the best search technology to get the best kind of data. It's a lot, especially to build on your own. That's where you have vector search coming in. So instead of building all of the mechanics that go into building a RAG system, you could just use vector search for your RAG apps. Under the hood with Vector AI Search, we've simplified the end-to-end search and discovery process of managing numerous RAG technologies like your ETL, OCR, chunking, embedding, indexing, storing, input, cleaning, schema adjustments, etc. All of these they just boil down to a few simple clicks. This makes it super easy for you to build RAG-powered apps using Vertex AI Search as your retrieval engine. Now that we have the definition of RAG out of the way and we've introduced Vertex Search, let's actually understand what is Vertex Search. Vertex AI Search is a great way for you to simplify and scale the same DIY RAG that I spoke about and all the steps that's involved in building a RAG. Instead of doing it in your own way or doing it yourself, you could just use Vertex AI Search in a more simplified manner and also achieve the scale that's required, especially when you have it's especially useful when you have huge amounts of data and also need performance. What you see here is the Vertex AI platform. Both Vertex AI Search and Conversation, which I'll be discussing later on in the slides, both of these are built on top of our Vertex AI platform capabilities. Vertex AI search and conversation offer an easy to use low code to no code developer interface that simplifies the process of discovery, customization, and augmentation and deployment just to a few clicks with an easy to use orchestration layer on top of it. It comes with grounding as a key foundational capability so that your generative outputs are rooted in your enterprise data. It makes it easy for you to pull in data from across your organization with different data connectors for common enterprise applications, which could be like your Salesforce, Jira, Confluence, and also have Vertex AI extensions to perform real world actions like make bookings, make transactions, integrate it to a calendar, and so on. All of this means you can create a production grade generative AI search experience and conversational agents in hours instead of days, weeks, or even months in some cases. First, let's actually take a look at what Vertex AI search and a bit of the background that it comes with. One of the most challenging problems to solve for an organization is the discoverability of the information itself. Many times, data will be scattered across a bunch of different sources. Some might be in documents, some might be in databases, some might be in web pages, or sometimes it can be an entire website or a domain itself. This makes it difficult for employees and customers to find just what they're looking for, whether it's internal data or even your information available on your public site. There are three main challenges when building a search service for an enterprise. One is the service level agreements for any Vertex AI search service is high. Most companies don't have the time or the budget to build a service that's capable of handling large amounts of data in a wide variety of formats while also being scalable and available 24/7. The second challenge is that the traditional keyword search is too restricted, and I'll talk about this as to why in my next slide. Especially for users who are familiar with AI-powered search and recommendations every day, like we're all used to using YouTube, Instagram, and other apps. So, especially when you have users who are familiar with these kind of interfaces, keyword search becomes too restrictive. These experiences are standard today, it's much more difficult to build and implement. The third challenge is how to take advantage of generative AI and LLMs that are the pinnacle of information retrieval technology. Vertex AI Search from Google Cloud provides a simple to set up service that unifies all of this information together and makes it straightforward to find. It's an out of the box solution, which means you can deploy the fully managed search engine very quickly. You don't have to build and lead an entire DevOps team to manage it specifically. And it also uses something called as semantic search, which provides next gen search experience, as we will discuss later. Vertex AI Search provides LLM based summarization. It also provides multimodal search, chatbot integration, and also utilizes the latest GenAI technology. Enterprise users love search experiences that's built on Vertex AI. Why? Because they are seamless, natural, and personalized, which is a far cry from your legacy hard coded keyword searches of the past. Google search, which all of us are familiar, you and I use this. Google search technologies, is backed by over 2 decades of experience pioneering information retrieval at scale. They offer powerful information retrieval capabilities of RAG solutions. With Vertex AI Search, for instance, developers can easily combine LLMs with Google Search technology, letting them focus on building innovative AI apps instead of taking months to design and build their own advanced search engine for RAG systems. Vertex AI Search you can think of it as a fully managed platform that lets you build an AI enabled search experience for your public data or your internal websites, mobile applications, or various other enterprise search services that you might have. The product is it's a result of a deep collaboration between the Google search team and Google cloud team. So what are years of research that we've put into building Google search, that now we're collaborating with Google search to bring that as a solution to businesses like you in the form of Google cloud. And the product here is called as the Vertex Search AI. Semantic search, as I spoke about before, is increasingly becoming a crucial feature in most search engines. Despite these advancements, most rack systems still use a simple similarity search in vector databases to retrieve information. When a data set is in the form of Q&A pairs, then similarity search works well. However, in real world scenarios, more often than not, data doesn't always your data doesn't always exist in these Q&A pairs, which is why it's crucial for the model to understand the intent behind the query itself and predict its relationship with the corresponding answer. Um, Google search started incorporating semantic search in the year of 2015, um, with a number of innovations that came along in that same year, such as your rank brain or neural matching. What does neural matching do? Basically, it allows the retrieval engine to understand the relationship between the intent of the query and the relevant documents. As a result, the search recognizes the content of the query as opposed to doing a simple nearest neighbor or simple similarity search. So, for example, if you say, I'm feeling blue, instead of doing a keyword search, Google search understands the intent behind this query and returns a result related to mood, personality, or it could even be songs. However, this is not to say that semantic search alone is your cure all. Google has spent over 25 years in advancing keyword based search technology as well. So it's usually often a combination of both semantic search as well as keyword search, both methodologies put together to generate the most appropriate response. Vertex Search, which, as I said earlier, is a Google Cloud product, and it uses the same technology that we use to build Google Search, which is it uses the same rank brain, neural matching process for semantic search, and keyword search as a combination of all of these in order to provide the best possible result to the query in question. On the other hand, it also comes with a bunch of other features, such as it's multimodal. So you can use images besides just text. It's multi-turn, which means you can ask follow-up questions and have a conversational search experience. It also provides helpful summaries and citations to aid in faster knowledge discovery and build confidence in information shared across internal or external application. Information is only surfaced to users who have access to it. In that way, that you have full control over the search engine that you're building. I spoke briefly about how Google search engine uses semantic search and how this is becoming crucial in RAG systems. So I want to dive a little more deeper into this topic and help you understand why this is important. So, what is semantic search? Many of you might wonder, what is this semantic search? To understand what a semantic search is, we need to know the major shift that's undergoing in the IT industry. In traditional IT systems, most data is organized as structured or tabular data using simple keywords, labels, and categories in databases and search engines. This has been the foundation of user experience you'd have with usual IT systems for information retrieval and recommendation. In contrast, in an AI powered system, these AI powered services arrange data into simple data structures known as embedding. Again, embedding is a term you may have heard. It's everywhere. As you know, GenAI has come into picture, and embeddings is also everywhere, right? We use it a lot. So, what is an embedding? Let's see how AI organizes data using these embeddings. Once trained with specific content like text, images, tweets, or anything, AI creates a space called as embedding space, which is essentially a map of the content's meaning. AI can identify the location of each content on the map, and that is what an embedding is. Let's take an example here where a text discusses movies, uh, actors, and music with a distribution of 10%, 20%, and 30% respectively. In this case, the AI can create three embedding values, which is, as you can see, point 0.1, point 0.02, and point 0.3 in a three-dimensional space. This is a very simplified example for this explanation. In reality, an embedding space may have hundreds or even 1 to 2 thousands of dimensions that can represent millions of different categories of content. And AI can put all of this content with similar meanings closely together in this space. According to Google's machine learning crash course, embedding refers to the process of mapping high dimensional raw data such as images and text, which can have about tens of thousands or millions of dimensions, to a lower dimensional space using deep learning models. This is done to extract the meaning or semantics of data and create a map of the content's meaning. So, Google itself largely also organizes data across various services that we all use today, such as your Google Search or YouTube, Play, etc. All of these and many others to provide search results and recommendations with relevant content. Embeddings can also be used to represent different types of things in businesses, such as products, users, user activities, conversations, music, and videos, signals, and signals from your IoT sensors, and so on. Let's take a look at how an embedding space looks like. It's quite interesting. Let me just bring this up. So this is an embedding space for handwritten digit images. The embeddings are grouped based on how similar their shapes are. And this is another example. It's an embedding space for text sentences. Even though they're all written in different languages, the sentences are with similar meaning are grouped together. Sorry, I'm just having some trouble with my screen. So, embeddings is an essential technology utilized by Google Search to enhance its semantic search abilities along with keyword search. Like I said before, semantic search alone is not the cure all. Rather, a good search engine uses a combination of both keyword as well as semantic search method for the most relevant results. When a search query is entered, a language model based on BERT converts it into an embedding. Web pages are also transformed into embeddings beforehand, enabling the service to conduct a vector search to locate web pages that match the query's intention in the embedding space. In the past, Google search used only keyword search model. This model sometimes gave too many, as you can see in the example on the screen, it gave too many math textbooks for students when someone searched for math practice book for adults. But now with semantic search, it can understand the intention behind the query and show the most helpful results at the top. So it simultaneously performs both keyword search as well as semantic searches for each query. The results are then merged and re-ranked based on their respective scores. So it combines, in a sense, it sort of combines the best aspects of both search approaches to fill the gaps left by each. So this is the major shift in the IT industry that I was talking about, especially for information retrieval and recommendations. AI is now playing a crucial role in human computer interaction in all of these applications. It organizes data into embeddings, which represents the user's intention, the meaning of a product, or many other things that you have in your business. It creates a new level of search experience that's becoming the new standard. I'd like to walk you through a demo here. I've been talking about how Vertex Search AI is out of the box with very little uh, expertise required, or don't really need an entire DevOps team sitting behind it building the whole rack system and so on. I'd like to show how simple and quick it can be through this demo. So if you see, I've navigated into the agent builder and I'm creating an app. Multiple different types of apps can be created. For this demo, I'm using search. Different kind of settings. You have the enterprise features, advanced LLM features. Go ahead and just provide a name for your app. I'm sticking to the default settings for this demo. Provide a company name, and you could choose a preferred location or just stick to global. Once you've created the app, you attach a data source to it. Now your data source data could be in any of these multiple sources. We support various ones: website, BigQuery, Bigtable, even Gmail, Google Drive, or just cloud storage. And different types of data as well. It could be unstructured data, structured data, JSON, any of these. I'm importing a particular file from my bucket. In this case, it's a PDF. It's a book on Anne Frank. It's a novel. I'm going to provide a name for my data store. Let's just go and call it Hackathon Data Store, and we create the data store. It takes a couple of minutes after this step for the data store to be once created and the data to be indexed and imported. Once that step is completed and your data is available, you pretty much are set to start using it, provided you are going ahead with the default configurations. So if you see there, the import is in progress. It will take you a couple of minutes depending on the size of the data. Let me just go ahead a few seconds. Yeah, you see that the import is successful. It's completed. Now your data file is also appearing there down there. Once this is done, I go into configurations. Yeah, so this is the PDF document that we're using to, for the search engine. It could be anything. I've just kept it simple for the demo. Let's just take a quick look at what kind of configurations are available. You have multiple different types of configurations. You want just search results to be returned. You want search with an answer. You want search with follow-ups. Search with an answer is essentially like a generative summary is provided based on the question, which it searches through the document and gives you the response. You can use different types of LLMs, or you can just use the most stable version that's available in the moment. Once you've gone through the basic configurations, you complete that, and then you also have a preview section here. In the preview section, you go ahead and test. You can do a mobile app version test, or you can also just do a search widget which can go into your website. I go ahead and ask a question: what war is Anne Frank, the novel, speaking about? And it quickly looks through the document, the PDF, and it generates an answer along with the summary. It's fetching the document for me, and it's also generating a summary for me. And if you notice, there are also a few follow-up questions that it's prompting me to ask. I go ahead and choose the third option if it's a true story at all. And then within a few seconds, it's able to respond and give me this answer. So the real thing to appreciate here is, I spoke about how complex it is to build a RAG system, and if you were to do it yourself, it would take you a lot more effort. It wouldn't take you this. If I'm being fully honest, it actually took me just about 4 minutes. 2 minutes in that was actually just the data indexing. The rest was hardly just 2 minutes to set it up. And imagine setting up a whole search engine that's pretty much like a Google search engine being built out in a couple of minutes. Of course, there are other nuances and requirements and customizations that come into play. But if you're looking for like a immediate start solution for a search engine, it hardly takes you much time. In the integration section, you are also provided a small snippet of code that you put into your web UI code, and then the widget is available on the website itself. Sorry, I don't know. Each time I play a video, it gives me some trouble to go into the next slide. Yeah, I also want to show another small demo where we've used like a 20 PDF files of Google research papers that has about 400 pages. So what if you were provided this copy of these PDFs and you were asked by someone to investigate it and answer questions like what is video localized narratives or annotated diversity by scrutinizing these 400 pages. Simple thing to do would be import all the files into your Vertex AI search and just run a query, and it will provide you an answer in a few seconds. And let's see how that goes. Again, it's creating a search application for you here, creating like a search engine, goes ahead and gives it a name. In the next step, again, we attach a data store from cloud storage, importing a file from one of the buckets where it's pre-uploaded. We've uploaded an entire folder in this case. In my previous demo, it was a file. Once the files are all up and ready and the import is completed, you can go into the preview section of your GenApp Builder for the search application that you just deployed, and go ahead and ask a question: what is video localized narratives? And it's able to do a quick semantic search through all of the documents that are available. If you notice in my previous demo, there was just one PDF, but here there were multiple, and it was able to give me a result in a matter of few seconds. So I hope you also noticed that Vertex AI search generates a summary. So in my demo, I showed you the three different options under search. In the drop down, you had like just search, and then there was search with an answer, and then search with a follow up question. So the search with the answer option generates a summary of the query result. This summarization is automatically done by the LLM that's associated with the search engine. So instead of looking at each page one by one, you can instantly get the gist of the search result itself. And I'm sure we've all noticed this in the Google search engine as well, right? Earlier, if we typed a question and wanted to understand, for example, is it a good time to holiday in Thailand in November? Uh, you'll get a bunch of travel links with the information, and you go through the links and then you choose which one is relevant, and then you read through that link in detail. But now it generates a quick summary for you on the top right below the search tab, and then you have the links that follow. Similarly, that's exactly what the Vertex AI search is doing for you as well. And you can trust it because the summary is generated from the business reports or the data that you're providing it. It's not generating it from nowhere or from the internet. This is the way you can use the power of Gen AI with the responsibility of your business use cases. In summary, uh, what is Vertex AI search? It gives you an out of the box developer experience. We just saw that in the demo. Whether it's web search pages, tabular data, documents like PDFs, as you saw in the data sources, you could use cloud storage, you could use websites, you could use Bigtable, BigQuery, any of these. So it could be any of these data sources, you just bring them in. Vertex AI search automatically builds a schema and searches and creates a search index for your data with a simple UI flow. Second is it uses the semantic search. It searches by content's meaning, not just by keywords. Behind the scenes, the documents are converted into embeddings for you, enabling the next gen search experience as is. So you don't really have to vectorize it yourself. Vertex AI search is capable of doing it for you. And the last point is it has the LLM capability. With the summarization, Vertex AI search saves you time for opening and looking at every page for understanding what you get with these results. So instead, you can get a gist of them in seconds, dramatically improving the information retrieval productivity in a wide variety of businesses. Also, the multimodal feature will allow you to search from images, text, and many different mediums and entities in your businesses. These LLM features are based not on the virtual out of nowhere outputs from your chatbots, but they're grounded with business facts with responsibility. So, whatever data source you provided, that's where it will pick the information from. That summarizes the first part of this workshop, which was the RAG piece and the Vertex AI search. Now, let's get into the last part of today's session, um, which is Vertex AI conversation. If you want to create a more chatbot like experience, you can use something called as the Vertex AI conversation, which is powered by Dialogflow CX. Like Vertex AI search, you remember the slide, I brought it up in the beginning. Uh, just like Vertex AI search, Vertex AI conversation is also built on top of Vertex AI platform's capabilities, providing an easy to use low code to no code developer interface, which I'll show you here as well. Before we get into what is Vertex AI search, let's take a step back and see what is the current state of conversational experience. And this is not new to any of us, right? We're all customers in our daily lives. We engage with customer support in one or with one or other businesses. In a customer support scenario, we're all spoiled. We all expect answers and we want them fast. And in this example, what you're seeing is the conversation goes back and forth quite a bit, only to end in a situation where the user finds out that there are no tickets available. And this can be quite frustrating, right? You pick up the phone and you're calling the bank customer service agent, for example, and then you go through the IVRS, you're pressing through a bunch of numbers, and then you wait for them, and then finally you're waiting for the operator. This is a whole tedious experience. Or even if it's a chatbot for that matter, if you're going through the chatbot and you're not able to get your answer, it's a frustrating experience. And that in turn results in low customer service or escalations and so on. A more natural experience would be something like this, where it's like a conversation. Within the first 2-3 questions, the customers receive their answer. And don't we all something that's more like this than us having to impatiently wait on the chat window? But building a chatbot from scratch, considering all possible conversation flows, turns, pages, etc., to define and implement fulfillment, your API calls, routes, etc., is a huge undertaking, and we mustn't underestimate the effort it requires. It truly is difficult to design for different ways that the customer will navigate in a conversation. And this can end up in a high ratio of unfulfilled chats or escalations or even human intervention. And I'm guilty of, requesting transfer call to an operator more than many times. An enhanced conversation capability is more informational. You can quickly find the exact answers that you're looking for. It's transactional and it's generative. It should also be able to handle tasks like, say, book tickets for you or schedule appointments for you and so on. This is where Vertex AI conversation comes in. Both Vertex AI search, like I said, Vertex AI search and Vertex AI conversation, they're part of the Vertex AI platform, and they both leverage the same foundational models for language understanding and information processing. However, they use these technologies in slightly different ways. Vertex AI conversation lets you easily build and deploy chatbots, whereas search is more like a search engine that you're building for your own information repository that you have. Vertex AI conversation combines foundation models with something called as dialog flow. Dialog flow is no new kid on the block. It's been around for a while, but it required a lot more manual effort from the users to build out an entire chatbot. But now with Vertex AI Search, it combines all the foundation models that we have along with dialog flow to create a more powerful conversational AI platform. This gives it the ability to understand the nuances of a conversation, follow the flow of a dialogue, and provide relevant responses. Thereby, it simplifies the complex conversational flows and graphs via natural language prompts. Uh, it's free to customize the output through generators and external webhook triggers. Like, say, if you want to perform extra tasks, let's say the customers requesting for a car service, and then the chatbot goes and says, yeah, there are nearest centers available to you. The one that's closest to you is available in XYZ location. Do you want the location pin for the same? So then you can simply use webhook to connect it to Google Maps and provide the location pin for the user to visit the center. It also provides analytics. The conversation history can be exported to BigQuery table if enabled, and the comparison across sessions can be made. Uh, The technology that it uses are foundation models from Google, the Dialogflow CX for conversation flows, state machines, and intent-based NLU. Uh, these bots use Vertex AI search in the backend to index your enterprise data. In fact, you can use the same data to build both your search engine as well as your conversational bots. And this enables you to offer more personalized and immersive conversations, but also enable real time transactions. Um, Not only are the responses grounded in your data here, the data that you have provided access to, you can also program on how these bots handle specific queries. For example, if you have some troublesome customers asking questions that absolutely make no sense, um, you can absolutely handle that with the bot by instructing it to not answer such questions and say I'm trained to answer specifically questions from this domain or this business, and so on and so forth. The best part is that you can program your agent responses and workflows in a very natural language with no coding required. Your conversation agent can help in completing transactions like I said, like booking a flight on a travel website or requesting a new check from your bank from within a chat interface, serving as a personal digital assistant that we all enjoy having today. Now, connecting to these enterprise data sources is as easy as pointing your application with Vertex AI's new extensions and data connectors. Along with this, Vertex AI Conversations supercharges your chats with transactional capabilities. It provides dynamic and personalized conversations by combining generative AI with world knowledge. It can also it's able to complete transactions, that is like payments, booking, meetings, etc. You can also easily build workflows, that is define agent actions with natural language prompts. You don't have to beforehand think of all possible conversations and turns and uh, build out the flows. Rather, you can provide a few simple prompts and instruct the bot on how to handle these. In order to set this up, you can start off with something as simple as your domain URL. In the case of Vertex Search AI, we saw how connecting a data source was we picked something from a Google Cloud bucket. You could also simplify it further by just using your domain URL as the data source to have a full-blown conversational experience, making large volume of data um, easily access into uh, easily accessible human like answers. It can pass the content from your websites, PDFs, FAQs, and route the most useful answers to your customers, just like how Vertex Search AI could interact with different types of data source in the same manner. In situations where it can't find direct answers, let's say it can't find the answer in like an FAQ document that you provided or a PDF that you provided, it can generate answers to fall back on and avoid situations like, can you rephrase that for me, or I'm sorry, I did not understand it, and so on. So instead of you having to think of multiple different possible questions beforehand and setting up conversation flows, you can instead use the power of generative AI and LLMs to dynamically create responses from the context found in these attached data sources. You can also leverage the power of Gen AI to provide instructions to the bot with helpful prompts, which describe the tasks it needs to perform, the goal it needs to keep in mind, the actions, parameters, API endpoints, validation checks, webhooks, integrations, and so on. All of this can be done with a few instructions given through prompts. This way, your developers can focus more on the design aspect of the bot rather than the implementation details of the bot itself. The With Dialogflow earlier, if any of you've used it, you would have noticed how you had to define an intent, you had to choose the routes, the flow, you had to create pages, define parameters, the agent phrases, and so on. Now with uh, Vertex conversation coming in and combining with Dialogflow, you don't really need to get into most of these aspects unless you are building a highly complex or custom bot. Rather, you can just create a bot just like we created chat, search. You can create chat, connect it to a data source, and a default page and flow is created for you, which can handle most of the uh, questions that are already there in the data source without you having to create any flows or conversations or turns. The bot itself can handle it for you. In this demo for conversation is slightly different. I'm not really going to be showing the backend. Creating the backend part for a chatbot is pretty similar to the search itself. In the agent builder console, you have, like how we saw search, this chat right beside it. That's how it is. But I want to show an entire experience of a customer through the chatbot. Now, this demo has, we've used a hypothetical customer called as Flyaway Airlines, and we see how the customer service chat is experience is enhanced. In the backend, it's not just using the Vertex conversation AI alone, it's also using Cloud Run for the front end and the back end. It's also using speech to text for a live transcription. It's also using Gemini for summarization, sentiment analysis, what is the next step of action. All of it is happening live as the demo, as the call is going on with the customer. Uh, Sorry, I just have to stop sharing for a second. And share. Just give me a second. Yeah, there you go. So you see, this is Flyaway Airlines, and this is a live call that is happening between the customer service agent and the customer itself. We've also set it up for multiple different languages. I'm just going to stick to English, but it can also, if the customers say moving between different languages, English to Hindi and from Hindi back to English, it can still understand that and create the transcript for the same. I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Hello. Thank you for calling Flyaway Airlines. My name is Tom. How may I address you?
You can call me Patel.
How can I help you today, Mr. Patel?
I'd like to make a change to my existing flight booking. Can you help me with that?
Absolutely, Mr. Patel. Could you please provide your booking reference number?
Sure, it's AY459D for Delta.
Thank you. Okay, I see you are flying to Orlando with your family next month. That's exciting. So how would you like to change your flight booking?
Right. Well, we're a family of 4, and it looks like we are assigned seats that are scattered around the plane. I was hoping we could be seated together if possible.
Let me take a look at the seat map. Unfortunately, it looks like the flight is quite full. Would you be interested in upgrading to premium seats? There are a few together in that section.
Oh, I'd rather not pay for premium if I can help it. Is there really no way to get 4 seats together in standard economy?
Let me double check. I'm sorry, Mr. Potter. It seems that there's a system limitation that's preventing me from grouping 4 seats together on this particular booking.
Okay, but this is pretty ridiculous. We booked months in advance. Why is the system preventing us from being seated together as a family?
I understand your frustration. It is really not ideal. Let me see what else I can do. Would you be willing to wait a moment while I speak with my supervisor?
I don't have much of a choice, do I? Just please see what you can do.
Of course, I won't be long. I've managed to check. We need to raise this issue with our internal tech team. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience, Mr. Patel. Is it okay I give you a call back once I follow up with my tech team and get updates from them?
Okay, please call me back ASAP. I want to get this sorted out soon.
Let me get this prioritized for you. Is there anything else I can help you today?
No, that's all for now.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
So if you notice, soon as the call started itself, the live transcription was going on here. There was the intent before the summary part came up. There was the intent that was generated right away. Now you have the summary. Yeah, you see the intent right here. The suggested follow-up actions and also the sentiment of the customer. Of course, he wasn't very pleased with the resolution given, so the sentiment is quite low. And then it also creates a summary of the entire call post the call. Um, so like I said, in the backend, it's using multiple different services from Google Cloud, like the Cloud Run, speech to text, Gemini for various different uh, options, like sentiment and intent and so on, and also the Vertex conversation. That kind of brings me to the end of the demo and the presentation for today. If you'd like to get started with Vertex search, or Vertex conversation, you could scan this QR and it will take you to this page where you can get started on testing it out as well. And this is for conversation. If you'd like me to show you the back end of how to build a bot like I did for search, you can put that on the search tab, on the chat box, and I can quickly do that. If not, we can take some questions if there are any. Will Vertex AI take care of vector storage, similarity search, and all? Um, if you're trying to ask if it will take care of the storage and the search part, I'm not sure if I understood that question correctly, but the backend, the RAG system of it, yes. But in terms of storage, you will have to upload your data to a data source, which could be a cloud storage or BigQuery or one of the many sources that I showed in the demo. It could be one of those, and then you connect it to vector search as a data source. If you remember in the demo, we created something called as the data source. You create it, connect it to the data source, and that's it. But the rest of it, which is your embeddings and the search piece for the the right answer, that will be taken care of vector search, taken care of by vector search. Yes. What happens when my document have any images in it? Does that get embedded as well? Yes, that does too. Um, we do have an embeddings API which you can use if you're building out your own, but particularly for Vertex AI search, you don't need to create embeddings. Vertex AI search does it for you automatically in the backend, which is why I was saying in the beginning, when I showed you what all it takes to build a RAG system, there are a lot of steps, right? But with Vertex AI search, you don't really have to do any of those backend requirements in order to build a RAG. That is the whole retrieval part, the embedding, the vectorizing. You don't have to do any of that, and vector search can take care of it for you. Yes. Dialog flow. So before GenAI and all of that came into being, we had a solution called as dialog flow. We still have it. It's our original chatbot like solution. Um, you could build an entire chatbot with it, but you had a lot of manual effort that it required in terms of design and implementation. Like you had to pre-decide what are the flows in the conversation, possible flows in the conversation between an agent and a user. So there's a lot of manual effort required into building a full-fledged bot with dialog flow. You can still do it that way, but now we've also integrated GenAI into the solution. A combination of both of these, along with a foundation model, gives you Vertex Conversation AI, Vertex AI Conversation. The back end of it, one of the elements is dialog flow. what are the limitations while using App Agent Builder? Could you elaborate that question? What is Is Vertex Chatbot and Vertex Agent the same? Um, Both the names don't exist. It's Vertex AI Conversation. The That is the name of the service, but it is a chatbot. There is no agent. We have something called as agent builder. So in my slide, let me just quickly show you that slide. Just give me a second. Let me quickly go back to, you see this slide here. I spoke about Vertex AI. So as part of Google Cloud's AI platform or AI portfolio, we have something called as Vertex AI. And Vertex AI has 3 modules to it. One is the model garden, then you have the agent builder, and then you have the search and the conversation. So agent builder exists, but there is no Vertex agent like as a synonym for chatbot per se, if that was your question. Agent builder is what it's called. So in the console, if you're trying to build either search or conversation, you will look for agent builder. Okay, thank you, everyone.